one nation, one election.
India had simultaneous elections for many years after independence. And now, with the One Nation, One Election bill, the Modi government wants to bring it back.
For leave to introduce the Constitution 129th Amendment Bill.
But why is there so much opposition to it now?
जो सदस्य इसके पक्ष में हाँ गए, जो सदस्य विरोध में ना गए.
Supporters say holding simultaneous elections will save thousands of crores and improve governance.
Number one, reduced expenditure and logistical efficiency, sir.
But critics argue that it will reduce accountability and weaken federalism.
Absolutely assault the basic structure of the Constitution and are beyond the legislative competence of this House.
It's all very confusing, right? But don't worry, this is exactly why I'm here. Let's break down the arguments of the Ram Nath Kovind Committee report based on which the bill was drafted and take a critical look at the claims and counterclaims. Starting this January, we've come to you every single week with explainers breaking down complex issues, clearing the confusion, and giving you facts. In today's fast-paced news cycle, it's easy to feel lost. Stories break so quickly and often without the full context, leaving us with more questions than answers. Plus, many news channels are twisting narratives and spreading misinformation. That's where Let Me Explain comes in. Now, it's the end of the year. If you think Let Me Explain has simplified news for you, and if it has helped you frame your worldview, then support us. Become a News Minute and the News Laundry subscriber. The idea of one nation, one election isn't new, but it's certainly one that's come into sharp focus in the recent years. In the early years of India's independence, simultaneous elections were the norm. From 1952 to 1967, we had Lok Sabha and state legislative elections happening all together. Then the shift away from simultaneous elections came about because of political instability. Let me give you 3 quick examples to show how the cycle broke down. In 1959, Kerala's communist government was dismissed after intense opposition from religious and political groups. In 1968, the Haryana government faced rampant defections leading to Assembly's dissolution. Fresh elections were held, putting the Haryana government on a separate electoral timetable. In 1971, Indira Gandhi dissolved the Lok Sabha early to solidify her position following the Congress split. The decision disrupted the alignment of national election with state elections. So over time, many such episodes meant that the electoral cycle for different states happened at different times. The idea of one nation, one election was first proposed by the Law Commission of India in 1983. It was suggested as a solution to the disruptions in the financial burden caused by frequent elections. Though the idea resurfaced in 1990s because of coalition politics and midterm elections, it didn't gain much traction. In 1999, the then Vajpayee government raised the issue once again. By 2010, the Election Commission of India echoed similar sentiments, advocating for one nation, one election to cut down the election-related costs and political disruptions. But the real turning point came in 2016 when PM Modi revived the proposal. A year later, in 2017, the Law Commission began a formal study. In 2023, the government formed a committee led by former President Ram Nath Kovind to explore the feasibility of one nation, one election. So what did the committee's report actually say? It said that the frequent elections mean that the Model Code of Conduct, that's the MCC, is in place for long stretches, which can stall policy decisions and slow down governance. The argument is that simultaneous elections could avoid this, allowing for smoother functioning of the government. Harish Salve, a member of the Kovind Committee, had some interesting points he made on this interview with India Today.
Major policy decisions have to be put on hold. Look at what happened recently when Maharashtra election was. Almost every important member of the Union Cabinet was there campaigning.
Well, it doesn't have to be this way. The entire Union Cabinet doesn't have to campaign for every state, municipal and panchayat election. The so-called disruption is really a choice. not an inherent flaw in the system. Also, the Model Code of Conduct doesn't stop the implementation of existing policies or programs. It only restricts the launching of new programs, and it only applies in states that are going to polls. So the argument of policy paralysis may be more of a red herring. Then there is the issue of the financial burden. The idea is that holding elections together could save money. And the Kovind report says that it could potentially boost economic growth, increase GDP, and reduce inflation. So on the surface, it sounds like a great idea. But here's the catch. To hold simultaneous elections, we could need more EVMs and VVPATs. And the estimated cost of manufacturing these could be around 4,500 crores. The argument here is that even with these additional costs, the overall expenditure would still be less in the long run. Let's put this in perspective. During Modi 2.0, that's between 2019 and 2024, the total election-related expenditure came to around 16,255 crores, which is around 3,251 crores per year. But when you compare this with the total union government expenditure, it's just 0.09%, which is a minuscule portion. So while saving money sounds appealing, the current cost of elections is relatively small in the larger scheme of things. See, the thing is, elections are the first step in a democracy. So spending just 0.09% of the total annual GDP doesn't seem too much. The Kovind Committee said that by holding simultaneous elections, there can be a 1% increased growth in the GDP. But critics argue that there's been no scientific evidence put forth to support this claim. The next point. Migrant workers often need to travel for each election, and simultaneous elections would reduce this burden, making it easier for them to vote. This is a serious issue, but this can be addressed through other ways other than holding simultaneous elections, like postal ballots perhaps. The committee has also said that holding elections together can reduce the strain on government resources like polling booths and officials, which means freeing up of more resources for governance. But this could create new challenges such as the need for extra personnel and security. The complexity of managing both national, state, municipal and panchayat elections all at once might actually put more pressure on the administration and create more confusion and chaos. Next, increased voter engagement. Another point in the report says that fewer election means less voter fatigue, leading to higher voter turnout and better overall participation.
If the elections are held simultaneously, the voter turnaround would be increased up to 7%, sir. Sir, if the...
Let's dive into the numbers for a moment. In 2024, the Andhra Assembly elections, which was held along with Lok Sabha polls, the voter turnout was 74.41%, which is relatively high. But if you look at the Kerala Assembly elections in 2021, the turnout was similar at 74%. Again, the Tamil Nadu Assembly elections, which was held at the same time, the voter turnout stood at 72.8%. In 2023, the Telangana Assembly elections, it was around 73.5%, and even in the 2023 Karnataka Assembly polls, the turnout was 73.19%. What this tells us is that there isn't much of a difference in voter engagement. But that's not all. Elections also serve as an important feedback mechanism for governments both at the union and the state level. Many policies have been shaped or changed based on the feedback governments get during elections. Take demonetization in 2016, for example.
And there is no need for panic. Your money will remain yours.
When reports of people struggling in bank queues surfaced, the government scrambled to fix the issues. The fact that elections were coming up in 5 states in just 2 months would have been considered. Similarly, when GST was introduced in July 2017 and dissatisfaction grew, the government had to quickly address the concerns, and again, assembly elections in Himachal and Gujarat were just around the corner. If we only held elections once every 5 years, we could lose the important feedback mechanism, which could impact the way policies are made and adjusted.
Now, I don't know if coordinating elections or leaving them apart violates federalism. What will happen? The states will become subservient to the union if elections are held together. If the election is held on the same day, a state is inferior. If the election is held 6 months later, the state is superior.
While what he's saying is true in theory, in practice, election outcomes are often influenced by the power of narratives. And under the one nation, one election, voters may focus more on national topics even during state elections, further strengthening national parties at the cost of regional representation. It's been argued that the share of votes of national parties in parliamentary elections has been dropping. In 1951, they had about 76% of the votes, but by 2019, it had fallen to just 68.7%. Meanwhile, regional party share has grown from 8% to 23%. This trend suggests that simultaneous elections could benefit national parties more. The biggest pushback against the current bill is against the idea of shortening the terms of assemblies to sync them up with Lok Sabha. Basically, the plan is to hit a reset button starting 2029. In states where elections are held after 2029, the state assembly's term will be cut short, ending in 2034. All this so that simultaneous elections can happen. For example, if Tamil Nadu and Kerala's next few governments complete their full term, elections would take place in 2031, but the assemblies would be dissolved just 3 years later in 2034. In Karnataka and Telangana, where elections are set for 2033, the assembly term would last just a year or less. And here is the catch. The state assemblies that would be shortened won't even have a say in the matter, because the bill will just be passed in Parliament. And the biggest stakeholder in all of this is you, the Indian voter. Do write to me and tell me what you think of one nation, one election and the arguments both in its favour and against it. The bill will be now scrutinized by the Parliamentary Committee, and public opinion could shape how elections are held in the future. That's it from me for this week. By the way, I hope you're all tuning into a brand new podcast, South Central, where our editor-in-chief, Thanya Rajendran, a senior investigative journalist, Leena Raghunath, and I are joined by at least 1 or 2 guests every week, and we take 3 important topics of the week and we break it down. You must catch it, and it'll go behind a paywall in just a few weeks from now. For now, it is free to air, so make the most of it.